Hello, I'm Christopher Schooley of Troubadour Maltings, and this is the Brewer to Brewer podcast from All About Beer. My guest is Kelly McKnight of New Belgium Brewing, and she is here for a conversation that goes beyond the brew house and into topics that matter to brewing professionals and curious beer drinkers. First, please visit allaboutbeer.com and follow on social media at allaboutbeer. And to support journalism in the beer space, check out patreon.com/allaboutbeer. We'll get into the conversation in just a minute, but first, this message.
First Tea is a proud sponsor of the Brewer to Brewer podcast. First Tea offers more than tea, bringing herbs and botanicals from across the globe to your doorstep. Be it flower, root, or leaf, contact First Tea to find colorful, fragrant, and flavorful botanicals. Email info@firsttea, that's FIRSDTEA.com to find out more.
For more than a decade, the Beer Law Center has been dedicated to the craft beverage industry, meeting the legal needs of breweries, wineries, distilleries, and all manner of alcohol producers and sellers around the country. From company formation to federal and state licensing, trademarks, regulations, and compliance, or if you're buying or selling an alcohol business, the Beer Law Center should be your first call. The firm never charges for an initial consultation, and if they can't help you, they'll help you find someone that can. Have a legal question? Contact the Beer Law Center on social media at Beer Law Center and online at beerlawcenter.com.
Malteurop Malting Company is based in North America, specializing in growing and producing quality malts for the craft beer and distilling industries. With local farms and malt houses spread across the United States, Canada, and Mexico, MMC's commitment to excellence is fully ingrained into every batch it produces, ensuring breweries and distilleries of any size can create the finest beverages on the planet. Visit malteuropmaltingco.com to learn how Malteurop can support your malting needs. Or you can contact them at customer success at malteurop.com or call 844-546-MALT for questions or to place your order. Malteurop, premium grains from field to flavor.
Okay, let's get into it. A bit about my guest today. Kelly McKnight studied pre-med in chemistry at Harvard and decided to become a brewer instead. She was the head brewer at a small brew pub in Boston before getting the call to move back to her hometown here in Fort Collins and brew for New Belgium Brewing. And we're glad to have her here back in Fort Collins, Colorado. 10 years ago, she began brewing in production and then moved into the research and development department, where she has been the lead R&D brewer for the last 5 years. Kelly spends her time working with her team to create new small batch recipes on the 10 hectoliter pilot system that range from one-offs, collaborations with other breweries, base blends for the wood cellar, pure research, or versions of future large brands that will go to scale on the production systems. Kelly, thank you so much.
Yeah, no problem.
Yeah. Thanks for hanging with me today here up at Zwei. So we can talk about adventure. That's the topic I want to talk about today.
Okay.
Some of the things I love about you beyond, just being the badass person that you are, is your focus. I frequently see you here when I come to do a delivery or something like that, and you're zeroed in on your laptop, working on formulas, working on recipes, and probably some inventory things and things like that. But your hyper focus in your work, also your sense of interest in your work, your curiosity. That's something that I value in people really, really highly, and value in you so much. Your investment and also your willingness to experiment and your sense of fun and adventure. So today, like I said, I want to talk about adventure.
All right.
All right. So my lead off here is, what is the first beer that felt like an adventure to you? Now, I know that's kind of a common question in a lot of shows like this in terms of, what's that first beer that made you feel like craft or made you feel like beer is something different? But I want to kind of separate from that and really focus on that idea of, oh, this is something adventurous. Like I already understand crap, but what's now this is something that's really adventurous. Maybe it's not mutually exclusive. Maybe it's the same beer, but
is it a beer I drank or a beer I first brewed?
Either one or both.
All right. I think you might want to ask about this beer later, and I do talk about this beer quite often, but my the first beer I ever made, that has now gone through many, many years and iterations and now has become beer to clear at New Belgium and Fort Collins. I actually brewed the original, I guess one, obviously a different name, probably 15 years ago out in Boston.
Okay.
And it was one of my very first, I think it's the first beer I ever made commercially. But I just got back. I do like to hang out in Kauai quite often, and that's very a luxurious thing. I'm glad I could do that. But I wanted to make a beer that brought me back to just chilling on that beach. Specific beach is Poipu Beach, and a lot of people have probably been there, but there's a bar there called Brennicki's. I've actually sent them a bunch of this beer before, but it had a totally different name in the beginning, and again, first commercial beer, so it's morphed many times, but I just wanted something that tastes like a Mai Tai. And so and make me feel personally like I was sitting there. So I made that beer, and I actually did a pretty good job for first commercial recipe, I
Oh,
would
yeah.
say. It was a wheat base at the beginning.
Okay.
Now
That makes sense for
Yeah.
like something sweeter and
sweeter,
lighter with that fruit juice kind of
yeah. and
element of a Mai Tai.
I wanted like a little chewier body.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that beer I wanted to take me to a place, and a lot of beers that I do brew, even at New Belgium right now, is when I get freedom to make whatever I want, which is pretty much all the time. We literally just talked to Chris, I love hanging out with you because we come up with all kinds of crazy stuff. But yeah, I try to like bring it into travel. So, Argentinian hunting loggers, all kinds of stuff. I use my travels to take me places. But that beer, its name was Toasted We let our mug club regulars name it. So it was after, the type of lava
Uh-huh.
But yeah, that was a good beer. That was an adventure beer, and it felt good. It felt good that hey, now I'm in brewing and I can make any kind of thing I want. Let's go.
Have you had like cocktail inspired beers before then? Or was that kind of just that mashup of idea?
No, not in Boston in the
Yeah.
early 2008. There was weird shit out there. The brewery I
Yeah.
worked at, which is gone now. We actually did make kind of a lot of crazy shit, but cocktail, we didn't really go down that avenue
Yeah.
right away.
That's cool. I think that really resonates with kind of a lot of the things I want to talk to you about today. Just the fact that you're trying to transport people to a place with the things that you're putting together, or yourself, for that matter.
That was a selfish beer.
Is there somebody that you worked on early on, or maybe even that you still work with currently to this day, that kind of inspired you to be more kind of outgoing in that way, brewery wise?
Yeah. I would say the first place I worked, because it was a brew pub and it was I can't really name a specific human, but
Yeah.
the culture there, which was terrible, but at the same time afforded you a lot of freedom to brew anything you wanted. We did a lot of Belgian beer, and so that's where I've always like loved. I mean, that's like my favorite type of beers. Anything Belgian, I just suck it down. I love it. But when I first started, I was able to say, hey, I'm gonna make all Belgian beers for an entire year. I mean, you get the couple of flagships
Mhm.
in there, but I really went on a deep dive into all kinds of Belgian strains of yeast and ingredients and just weird literature that I could scrounge up. So I wouldn't say I'm gonna give that credit to like a person, but I'm
Yeah.
gonna say the brewery I worked at just let me do whatever I wanted, and that's what I wanted to do.
Is it just kind of in your nature then, in that regard, to when you kind of latch on to an idea, you'll really kind of pour yourself into that research, like finding that. I mean, which obviously you went into medicine before, and you
Studied,
you
yeah.
switched, but still, like you don't go down that pathway without a passion for studying.
Yeah, I do. I go pretty crazy, and even here at New Belgium, they let me work on anything I want and dive deep into it. But yeah, I think I actually have a really good friend in marketing, and this is not a New Belgium friend. This is a friend way back in Boston, and she's a VP at a marketing company, and I'm always like fascinated by her role because she's in charge of user experience, and I don't even know what the fuck that really means. But I constantly ask her, I'm like, what is VP of experiential design? And I sound stupid right now to people, but she teaches me a lot, and and it's kind of how I always try to make beer, but it's
Yeah.
everything you do and see in the architecture of your beer from the moment you look at it, sip it, the name, all of it. It's all in there. And so
Yeah.
I've kind of learned that that's without knowing in the beginning, that's how I try to construct beers and do stuff.
It's just your nature. No,
Yeah.
that's super cool. Yeah, I actually, when I contracted with the Specialty Coffee Association in my former life before malting, that was one of my job titles was sensory experience design. I did a lot of
Well, shit, let's keep
experience design.
talking.
Yeah. So just even like designing the coffee experiences at TED Talks back in 2003 or 13 is the last
The
time.
Chicago area?
No, well, I was living in Chicago and actually had just moved back to Colorado. But at that time I had started Coffee Shrub, which was a small coffee importing group based out of Oakland, but I was also contracting with the Specialty Coffee Association of America. At the time, now it's just the SCA, Specialty Coffee Association, as a unified with the European Association, but at the time is just of America. And we got hired to produce the coffee quote unquote experience at TED Talks. And so that experience design is really an interesting world. Because like you said, like, oh yeah, you just set up coffee stations at an event and you're just serving coffee, but it's about going deeper than that. It's about like,
Yeah.
what are the coffees that you choose to and why, putting why between all the things that you choose. One of the things that I really focused on in that service was a craft or specialty or whatever, gourmet or whatever moniker you want to put on it, is really that's the identifying factor for me for all those things is a personal expression. There's a personal expression in that. So I wanted all the coffee and all the service of that coffee to have that personal expression. So what seems like maybe it was a really little thing, but when somebody came up to get a cup of coffee at the event, the person serving said, "Hey, I'm this person. I'm Kelly from Fort Collins. And this is the coffee we're serving today from here." It wasn't like trying to give too much information, but it was just personalizing that this thing is attached to people. The thing I'm giving you is attached to people. So experience design has those layers built into it in terms of like, how do you break down those barriers of entry to people and make them feel like that's a personal thing? And sometimes it's just like, hey, saying my name and I'm a person from a place. It's funny because it's actually ties a lot into like close-up magic, which is like all about doing something right under somebody's nose.
I'm good at that.
Yeah, I know it. So kind of getting into some of that broader aspect. I personally just got back from New Orleans on a family road trip, and I ran into our friend Shauna down at Mayo.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we hit Brew Carré, which I was staying really close by, and like sitting at the bar with some random guy that I had worked at the same coffee company that I worked at in Chicago. We had all these connections, and it was just amazing to be in another city and just kind of do that. I know you just got back from where?
Oh God. In the last, you mean like, I literally just got back from Kansas City.
Okay, yeah.
I was at the Pink Boots conference in Philly.
That's right.
The week before that. But then I, like a personal kind of fun trip, I just got back from Uruguay and Argentina.
Yeah.
With my best friend. Well, she didn't go to Uruguay, but we met in Argentina. Lee Lord, she's the brewmaster at Narragansett, but we go down there to judge Copa de Argentina,
Okay.
and we got to brew a collab there at Jabalina Brewing in Buenos Aires, which Jabalina is like they specialize in gozas. And so that was really cool because do you remember the 90s soft drink Josta?
Oh yeah.
Okay, so I fucking love Josta. I don't even drink soft drinks now, but
No.
that when I was a kid and skateboarding and riding my bike around and tearing up the Safeway parking lot.
Exactly.
They had, a vending machine and we would just chug Josta. And so what was cool was down there, Jabalina wanted to collab with Lee and I. So New Belgium, Narragansett and them. And it's a goza, right? So, and they are in their winter, or kind of there in the fall heading into winter. But I was like, let's make something totally fun. And so we were able to get Josta Berry, which you can't really find here. So we made a Josta. We were gonna put guarana in it, like the normal
Yeah,
soft drink had.
That's right. That's what I was trying to
Josta
remember what the
guarana.
thing was. Yeah.
But we just did the
Guarana.
straight. We tasted everything on the brew day, and we decided just Josta. So that was cool. And then the week before in Uruguay, I went to my buddy's brewery, Lucio. He owns Lucio Faina. He owns Indica Brewing in Montevideo. So
Okay.
there, he loves Belgian beer. And so, and obviously I do too. And so I was like, how do you want to combine American flavor? They want American flavors, right, down there. Or something different for the collab. And so I was like, I said, let's just make it Tiger's Blood Saison, but he had
Yeah.
never heard of Tiger's Blood. And I was like,
That's
this is such an American, combo. Obviously, a lot of people know it from Hawaii, but I think it was started in Texas. So watermelon, coconut, strawberry.
yeah.
So and that again, as a saison. So we went crazy brewing down there, and it's all canned up and getting shipped. So make sure you get some.
Hell yeah.
But yeah, that's the big trip I just
So
did.
what does a Josta taste like? Can you describe a Josta to us?
A Josta berry is kind of like a nice large red grape, more on the Concord end. So
More jammy
jammy
than like bright lychee like that.
Yeah, it's
Okay,
more
yeah.
jammy, but then meets like a pomegranate.
Oh, cool. So
So
a little bit of like astringency to it,
mhm,
that
yeah.
dryness. Yeah.
So you could tell that during fermentation that juice was
Yeah.
gonna cut through and not get completely scrubbed out.
And that I could see that being really nice in a goza, like having that presence, like a little earthy.
Jealous
But
we don't
like,
have it right
I
now.
know that sounds freaking
Yeah.
delicious. But I love that experience. I mean, that it speaks so much to me in my former coffee life, getting to travel to judge coffee competitions,
Mhm.
in country and having that exact experience. Whereas you're judging with other coffee professionals from all over the world or locals, who then are using points of reference for flavor attributes that not everybody has at the same time. So
Yeah.
like that, what you were saying about the Tiger's Blood, I mean, immediately when you say Tiger, that was my snow cone. 100% was Tiger's, because
It's so
I mean,
good.
whatever, I mean, it was 100%, it just tasted like sugar. I don't know if it had a flavor, but it was called Tiger's Blood,
Yeah.
which I was like, oh, that's going to give me the powers of a tiger. Like, obviously.
Which you have. I've seen
Which
them.
I have. But the fact that you put that out there and there was that kind of disconnect for a minute, but then you have that moment of like, oh, well, it's like this. Let's talk about this. And I love that sensory experience, kind of going back to experience design again, that whole idea of sharing or not sharing a flavor creates this opportunity for description and really flexing those muscles.
Yeah.
In the travel for judging, like what is that like in terms of the makeup of the judges at a competition like that? Is it pretty international in general, or
Yeah, I mean, I would say, there's strong efforts in so there's pretty strong efforts by most international comps, whether they're in Europe, Africa, South America, wherever,
Mhm.
to get an eclectic group from
Yeah.
all over the world, so that, it's like World Beer Cup, right?
Yeah.
You want people from everywhere to evaluate, and you're getting all kinds of different opinions.
It's almost as if diversity makes things better.
You said it. Yeah, and there's also, being a female identifying person in the industry, there's a very strong effort, at least internationally, to make sure that it's even more diverse in the
Yeah.
gender, or not just gender, but not just
Not just male judges.
well, and I don't want to like, yeah,
Yeah,
I mean,
that's
they just want people from all different groups, however you identify and
Mhm.
whatever your background is, which is very impressive, actually. And so, and I know that that's a thing because the like competition organizers reach out and ask and kind of say, like, can you help us, especially American judges? They love American judges because, in certain other countries, and I've only judged, let's just say internationally, I think in South America. So that's what I know. I don't know where I hear, but I don't know what
Yeah.
every other country is up to. But yeah, American judges are important because in certain ways our craft beer scene has been, chugging along for a lot longer. And so other countries want help and support.
Yeah.
They want their judges and brewers, who a lot of them are brewers, to learn a lot from us.
Yeah.
And to bring like our knowledge of sensory and our knowledge of, BJCP, which is international, but like all of our training to them to see how we do it, to see how other countries do it. So it's pretty cool.
The value of the competition for the participants is that diversification of the judges to get that kind of feedback, to see what's
Yes.
coming there.
And that's very, I mean, you owe it not only like
Oh,
to anybody, you owe it to everyone that organized the competition, but especially the brewers that, first of all, there's money, but there's the heart and soul that
Yeah.
they've spent on creating these beers. So, yeah.
I feel like that's one of the biggest intrinsic values of, and obviously it's super unique. And in so many ways, it's a luxury to be able to travel to judge at a competition like that. But I feel like that the value of like understanding how important this feedback is, really like sits on your shoulders and in your heart in a way that's really moving, like you really want to do your best, to really be helpful. You're not just there to like check things off and kick things out, that. And so I think there's a sense of jadedness with competition, right? That it's like, oh, this is the best thing and everything else gets kicked out, when really the value of the participating in a competition is getting real feedback and making improvements.
And I mean, that's your judging etiquette. Reputation usually precedes you.
Yeah.
So yes, you want to be there. It's not grueling. It's a long week, and usually a week about, but you're there for a reason, right? And you want to be as respectful as possible as you can to any beer that comes your way.
Now, I've never done a beer competition, but in coffee competition, it was all very, private. You take your notes, you write everything down. But the thing that I loved best about it was afterwards, you always had a session to talk through everything. I was wondering, is that kind of similar in those?
Yeah, it's pretty similar. You'll get your whatever, category or categories. Sometimes there's multiple kind of bundled in, but you get your flight. All the judges at the table do your own thing. Obviously I mentioned etiquette. You're not supposed to talk, make faces, do anything like that. Let everybody do their thing. But then you do have to move beers along, right? To the next round or a medal round. You have to pick winners. So once everyone's totally done, then you come together and you talk and you discuss, and it's pretty serious.
Yeah. What's that dynamic? Other than serious, what's that dynamic like? Like speaking with these judges from, all over the place.
It's pretty cool. I would say, you don't have to be, so I'm not BJCP certified.
Yeah.
And I just got accepted as, finally got accepted as a GABF judge. But like to highlight diversity in judging, I guess,
Yeah.
palates and whatnot. I have all my sensory a lot of my sensory training comes from the New Belgium's
Yeah.
sensory program, which is pretty
Intensive. We're good.
pretty, Warren Limbach actually set it up, and then Lindsay Barr took the torch, and obviously she's Drought Lab now. And now I have Allie, but our sensory program is what trained me on all my off flavor attributes. And that's super technical. I mean, we get every few months if you're on panel, you're tracked what you can detect, this, that, and the other. And then you are just like, okay, you basically you suck at this, but you're good at these.
So we're
And-
going to put you
but-
on these specifically. Yeah.
We learn how to get better, right?
Yeah.
At different aromas, off flavors, and whatever attribute training. That's mine. I mean, but then again, there's BJCP, there's others, and you learn a lot from the other judges because I guess I've only worked in Latin-ish based languages, but your like sensory jargon is, you learn a lot to like, what does methionol smell like
Right.
to somebody who's been training over here or
Totally.
the other, or what you learn is, wow, I could never detect that because
Yeah.
in my original descriptors, it says this, but this other judge described it as something else. And
Right.
now I can pick it up. all
You
the
didn't
time.
have the lexicon before to actually describe
Yeah,
it until
yeah.
you heard it in that way. No, that's super powerful. That's, again, one of those powers of diversity of palates that then just like expose you to something that
Yeah.
like, I just could never explain it that way. And now I totally get that. What the question I wanted to ask also about that international judging, since you've been more South America, Central America focused with those opportunities, what kind of trends are you seeing there in as far as beers?
I mean,
That's a
down-
super broad question, but I mean, like,
no,
what are the standouts, I guess?
I
Yeah.
mean, Katharina sours are obviously a big thing down there.
Mhm.
Amberana, totally able to use down there.
Yeah.
So, and then just insane tropical fruits that again, we can't get our hands on in the US, or we maybe could, but I practice being TTB compliant.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, you could ship whatever you want and put it, I don't know, but legally,
It's being recorded, Kelly.
I know, legally, yeah, there's just all kinds of new exposure to ingredients, and we all know that. But
Yeah.
you know what's something that's pretty interesting too is, and this doesn't have to be international, but just city to city water profiles
Oh my God.
or country to
Oh,
country,
yeah.
so that's
That's gotta be huge.
it's
Yeah.
cool how it can change. And we all know this, and we've
Mhm.
probably all read about it through the years in our brewing training, but yeah, water. I feel like it's kind of an important thing in
It
beer.
might be a little bit important.
I've heard.
I've heard. Yeah. No, that's super cool. I mean, I just remember.
And coffee, you must,
Oh yeah.
it's gotta be.
Oh, water is huge.
Yeah.
Because it like for that thing, just like in beer, to actually be expressed. If you have junky water, like it's not going to come out that way. But no, I mean, I keep kind of going back to that experience of just the new fruits and new descriptors and things like that. I just remember like in Brazil, the Suriname cherries. Have
Mm,
you ever seen they're like the Chinese lantern cherries? They have like these kind of ribs in them. They're so cool looking for this audio medium. It's bright red, but it's the closest thing I've ever had to just like putting a cartoon in my mouth. Like it was just like so vibrant and savory and tangy and like everything all at once. And it was just like a piano getting dropped on Bugs Bunny's head. It was like that's the best way to describe it. It was so good. So really quick, I'm gonna switch gears here in a second, but first We're going to take a short break from this message and then come right back for more of this conversation with Kelly McKnight of New Belgium Brewing. So we'll take a brief pause.
Did you know that lemon myrtle actually has more lemon aromatics than lemons? Rich aromas, delicious flavors, and bright colors. This is what First Tea's herbs and botanicals can infuse into craft beers. Email info@firsttea.com. That's FIRSDTEA.com to learn more about using a wide range of herbs and botanicals.
For more than a decade, the Beer Law Center has been dedicated to the craft beverage industry, meeting the legal needs of breweries, wineries, distilleries, and all manner of alcohol producers and sellers around the country. From company formation to federal and state licensing, trademarks, regulations, and compliance, or if you're buying or selling an alcohol business, the Beer Law Center should be your first call. The firm never charges for an initial consultation, and if they can't help you, they'll help you find someone that can. Have a legal question? Contact the Beer Law Center on social media at Beer Law Center and online at beerlawcenter.com.
Malteurop Malting Company is based in North America, specializing in growing and producing quality malts for the craft beer and distilling industries. With local farms and malt houses spread across the United States, Canada, and Mexico, MMC's commitment to excellence is fully ingrained into every batch it produces, ensuring breweries and distilleries of any size can create the finest beverages on the planet. Visit malteuropmaltingco.com to learn how Malteurop can support your malting needs. Or you can contact them at customer success@malteurope.com or call 844-546-MALT for questions or to place your order. Malteurop, premium grains from field to flavor.
Okay, welcome back. So, kind of expanding from, the traveling for judging, we talked a little bit about traveling for collaborations. I want to get a little bit more into that because I think that I love that that's such an important part of your job, because for me, that's why I'm a wholesaler. That's why I love to be a supply chain person, because I get to work with so many different people. It's all a collaboration for me. And that's something that gives me a lot of energy. I get the sense that that's kind of the same. You're a people person. You love working with people. What is the process that you have for picking collaborations? Is it pretty much just who's reaching out to you, or is there,
all right. So my job title
Mhm.
is lead research and development brewer. So part of my job is to do research and development.
100%.
If you didn't gather that. But so again, at New Belgium, I'm running our pilot brewery. I'm making all of, helping with recipe writing, because we have a team that all of our team. But things get split up. People work on voodoos, people work on other brands, people work on crazy weird side shit that we don't even know what it's gonna be yet. That might not even actually be a beer. I don't know. So in my job, creative space is a big deal, right? So I guess I've just been kind of connected with a lot of brewers always. Just, I don't know, I've been in the industry a moment. And so
You're a fun person to get to know.
Thank you. But I've always wanted to work with my friends and use it in addition as a platform for change.
Yeah.
And how that might sound weird at first is cool. It's not just me, and I'll talk about how I kind of pick collabs, but it's not just me. It's not New Belgium. New Belgium, I mean, they send me after I decide, right? Which is a luxury, first of all, because that's a lot of brewers don't work that way. Breweries don't work that way usually. But I usually might know, hey, I'm gonna be, I don't know, like Philadelphia for Pink Boots Conference. I knew I was going to Philly for that a few weeks ago, and I wanted to search around and work with a brewery. And it's my natural curiosity, right? To be like, what does everyone's system look like? How do they do this? How do they do that? Where do they get their ingredients from? I like to learn a lot. And so anyway, I looked around and actually referred to Lee Lord, who I mentioned earlier,
Yeah.
the brewmaster at Gansett, but she recommended Attic Brewing Company in Philly. So this is just an example. There's many ways collabs come about, but here's one. And so I had heard a lot about Attic. I know they're a little bit newer, and I know what I want to use my, again, I'm afforded to be able to do, like, I can do this stuff,
Yeah.
but I know that Attic works a lot with their community.
Yeah.
And so I reached out to them and they're super pumped. And what was cool about that brew, which we made, an elderflower tangerine cream ale,
Okay.
and they usually make more traditional styles. So, and I make wild stuff every other day.
Right.
I mean, I make traditional stuff too, but again, I'm dumping this, that, and the other in tanks and trying to make cool new stuff. So but they were very nervous, excited, but a little bit nervous because they were like, will our customers buy it?
Yeah. Yeah.
And this also happened to same kind of situation in a brewery I brewed with in Ohio. But I was like, no, like, look at the trends of the market. So this is how I can kind of add the collab is
Totally.
look at the trends of the market.
You have actual data that you can kind of provide.
I have actual data, but you don't anyone can have this actual data, right?
Yeah.
And I said, it'll be a fun beer. Let's do it. And then now and so I usually make a collab. We kind of come up with something, do the brew day. And then leading up to it or a little bit after, New Belgium, usually donates to local Pink Boots, chapters.
Mm-hmm.
So the Philly one will get a donation, but then how would I know what means most to each brewery, right?
Totally.
For a nonprofit donation. So I always ask them, who do you work with, or who would you like to work with? And then we do that. And then, for instance, to expand on things that we've done that are really cool through my collaborations are, and I was talking about using the platform for good, which is, New Belgium's ethos, but also I believe in it.
Personally.
Was Maui Brewing Company. A couple of years ago, we were there and we made an amazing beer, called Lee Chihu. So it's a Hawaiian saying Chihu. It's kind of just in the US, it is the US, but in the southern US, you'd say yeehaw.
Yeah.
I guess you could, whatever.
Yippee-ki-yay.
Sure. Sure.
That's
perfect. But we made lychee lager with local lychee from Maui. And then we turned the release date into a whole, first of all, the brew day was all women on island were invited.
Very cool.
Or people that were identifying as females. And that was awesome in itself. And then on the release, we had a workshop set up. So it was for women or people, on island to realize that you don't have, which we know kind of from being in the industry for a while, but you don't have to be a brewer to be in here, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we had a mini micro lab station set up. We had sales marketing, we had account, there was everyone from every aspect that you need to make a brewery run.
Yeah.
To teach that you don't just have to be the brewer, which people think is the star of the show, to run a brewery. You really need everybody in it. And so that was a cool educational opportunity. And then we ended up with that one. We donated to the Ohana Women's Shelter and a few other places. But it's when I make collabs, I'm trying to make people come together.
Yeah.
Versus just hey, I'm hanging out with my friend.
I'm here to,
on a free trip. It's not that.
Yeah.
And I hope people don't.
No, I mean,
when they get those opportunities, they don't think that either, because you're there to, first of all, learn from the other brewer.
Or to aid or whatever. I mean, that's super resonant with me. I really love that the idea of research and development is so tied to collaboration, Like it's a capital R research, right? And a
Yes.
capital D development. It's like you can do so much. And I mean, not that you're have a shortage of resources at
No.
the brewery, at New Belgium, but going and being on a different deck and all that stuff is so crucial. Like I just doing roaster training, back in the day, coffee stuff, like that's what I was like. People would be like, oh, I already know this. I already have my hands on this. But like the value is getting your hands on different equipment. It's like you might know roasting on this thing, or you might know brewing on this thing, but then applying that to something else is going to help you really understand what's actually happening there, mechanically, chemically, like all those kind of attributes.
And I honestly, especially like in other countries where things are set up differently because they have just different water systems or different
100%.
Raw material delivery systems. I love learning that because I feel, for 1 second, I usually feel stupid. And then I feel just totally inspired to learn whatever the hell else is going on there. And I love absorbing that.
Yeah. And I would just say, like, not to put words in your mouth or make you feel less stupid, that's not what I'm here
thank
for.
you.
Yeah. No, but like, it's about that change of mind, right? That change of perception, and just that opportunity to change your perception on a thing is so rewarding and gives you so much to just dive into.
And then, I mean, I'm not part of our process engineering team, but
Right.
I was part of our regular production brewing team for a long time. And to just, you got to think too, like some of the stuff I'm designing or brewing and working on, some of it, half of it is going to be, they're going to be like 10 to 100,000 barrel brands. So
Right.
the more I can learn about, which is part of my job anyway, but designing for scale
Yeah.
is very important. And I mean, again, we have an amazing team of process engineers, our brewmaster, all of our teams are great. But when it starts at the pilot level, which is a 10 hectoliter system, which is kind of the size of most smaller craft breweries.
Yeah.
You have to build all that into your recipe writing anyway. And so to learn from other people, maybe like this process improvement or that, or this, whatever, it's just extremely helpful to just have that in your like index of stuff, for brewing.
That scalability it's such a key skill and a really unique science in and of itself. My partner at Troubadour, Steve, came from pharmaceuticals, and his main job was scaling up proven lab tests to large scale production, right? And so there's a whole thing you go through as far as, because it's not just simple math, like, oh, we're going to make this much more, so we'll use this much more of this thing, to do it. What do you think the largest challenge in scaling a recipe up is?
Not ruining Andy Mitchell's life. Andy Mitchell is one of our
The wizard.
We call him the wizard. He's one of our process engineers at New Belgium, but I mean like his whole team. And really beyond that, one thing that we think about, or at least I think it's valuable having a post-production brewer from New Belgium writing and helping with all the recipes, which there's 2 of us on our team of 5 that are those things. Matt Gilliland, Mr. Voodoo,
Matty Matt.
He's been at New Belgium forever, and he used to be the human being that was the liaison between pilot and scale recipe writing and knowing the parameters and what. But I think when we start on the pilot floor coming up with recipes, you have your brewers in mind, right?
Yeah.
The people making it. And so I think having that knowledge, I mean, yes, of course, there's going to be things that suck when you're, I mean, I know because I did it, but when you're a production brewer, you're like, what the fuck? Like,
yeah.
But I think having people and having that background knowledge in mind when you write scale. Yeah. Of course, there's, a whole process to go through all kinds of departments. before you actually launch a beer. But having your brewers, your overnight brewers, it's 3 a.m. and they're making some crazy shit.
Dude.
Is their life going to be
Dude.
okay?
Oh
Because
my
we like our brewers and we want to keep them around. So I guess, I don't know. I think learning from all over the place and adding to the quality of life of seriously, who's really going to be making it is
Yeah.
a huge thing.
I mean, such a large piece of your overall job. It just seems to me, in all of this is empathy. Like, which I think is so beautiful. I think that
No, it is
it
because,
really is. Yeah.
I think personally, right? Because I guess it's an interview.
Yeah.
Life sucks when I've worked at one of the most the shittiest breweries in the country,
Yeah.
which again doesn't exist. Thank God. There's a ton of them out there, but starting from there and having that perspective, then moving to a place that had really nice equipment and amenities, and raw materials and whatnot. But it still is hard. So going through that and then now being a person on the side that writes everything.
Yeah.
I don't write everything. I mean, like our team that writes everything. There is a quality of life aspect. Again, yeah. Because there are breweries that don't give a shit.
Dude,
And we see it all the time. And it fucking sucks.
yeah,
It's your friends.
you got recipe design, you got beer, like production design, like you are living experience design to like tie it back to what we were saying earlier.
Yeah, they're good.
I know there's like a book somewhere that was like somebody gave me once that I like breezed through. I'll try to find it.
Cool.
On that subject, are there any books or anything that you've done research wise that have really helped you on this journey? Like things that have been like a key, like, oh, this completely unlocked this for me.
I wouldn't say this book. Well, there's a book that made me realize what the hell is going on in the US, I guess, with food science.
Oh,
so it's a
okay.
food science book. I didn't want to read it
I was gonna say, was
because
it Starship Troopers? It was
I
like-
wish, no. But it made me understand everything around
Yeah.
that we consume, and it's called the Dorito effect.
Okay,
Um,
I'm gonna write that down.
Dave Glorer and Cody actually had me read it, but it's not. It's about why is a Dorito so good? It's such a terrible way to say it, but what are you doing to design? And the evolution of since that
Yeah,
freaking chip hit the market, it goes into a lot of shit. And I don't know, it just helps me see
it's hard to
everything.
resist a thing like that.
I mean, but it's everything. So it helps me see. It didn't help me. It helped me what? I don't know. It's a good book.
It connected some dots.
A few 2 to 3 dots got yeah.
So going back into research and development, and I really do research and development, again, kind of going back through everything that you've said here. I feel like, oh, I'm lead pilot brewer, but I think research and development, it like really resonates with everything that you do. Can you speak? So that research and development, like you said in your bio, kind of entails a couple different things, like new brands, some quality control stuff, new design. Like if you were starting a new beer today with, say, ingredient X, what would the process for getting that beer through you be like?
Oh, so I'm gonna paint a little tiny picture. I think this is what you said.
Okay.
It's if me or my team found something that was really cool.
Totally. Yeah. Yes.
Or don't forget, marketing found something that they think is cool. Which our marketing team is pretty cool, but
They're
we
good.
work very closely. It's not one-sided. I've
Yes.
said this like it's when I had spoke at CBC or whatnot. We work together, which is kind of not how everyone is in brewing.
Yeah.
But if we found something that was really cool, we would brew it, make a prototype, mess around on it on what we call the bench,
Mm-hmm.
which is literally just a bench. But like I made a beer with this. Well, what can we take that? And that's why the Dorito effect is kind of a thing, because
Yeah.
everyone wants, even before reading that book or anything, I've always been a person in just cooking at my house or whatever
Yeah.
that loves layers and layers and layers and layers of design.
Yeah.
How can you construct this so that when you take it to someone, your goal, right, is always going to be hoping that they're like, oh, this is fucking rad.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, so I would brew a beer with whatever. Our little tiny pilot team, which is 5 people, which isn't the tiniest team, but for a bigger brewery.
Yeah.
We would mess around, we'd talk about it. And whoever is the recipe designer, like, it's their thing, but we want each other's advice because we're all experts in different areas.
Mhm.
And then we take that to potentially straight to marketing if it was something that was like an assignment. But if not, we would take it to like our boss's boss, Stephanie Palladino, who's awesome. And we'd taste it and we'd be like, this is pretty fucking good, but or maybe it's straight up great. Or
it's straight up great.
Or like, let's tweak it like this. And did you think about that? So
Yeah.
I think everything we do at New Belgium has a million minds on it,
Mm-hmm.
which kind of sucks sometimes
Sure.
because it's like we get crazy deadlines and it's like, how the fuck are we gonna make this get to market by that time?
Right.
But we always do. But I think it starts with our team. We bring it to other teams for opinions. And then once we all feel like it's hit out of the park or or good, 1 home run, not 50,
Right.
just to be 1. And then we go from there and we just rock it. But I mean, that starts at raw material sourcing
Yeah.
too.
Yeah.
It's crazy, but that's kind of how the progression.
It's maybe a hard question to answer, and maybe it doesn't make any sense. But what percentage of new projects would you say are led by new ingredients versus like a new style or a new technique or something like that?
I would say 80% of our new beers are led by new ingredients.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ingredients are kind of important.
Yeah, because also they can be scarce.
Yeah.
So it's like, this thing could be amazing, but can we get enough of it?
Can you get enough of it? Yeah.
Or are we buying it from people who have good manufacturing?
Dude.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or is this actually something that what kind of ethics are tied to the production of this thing in the first place?
That is pretty. I mean, we really attempt to weed things out by ethics practices. So yeah, but I would say most of our beers, like, of course, again, coming from marketing, it could be an idea, but that idea revolves around ingredients. So that's really where we're coming from.
No, I mean, obviously I'm super biased in the whole thing, but I think, like the 2 biggest things, and I can't say it enough, that an industry like craft beer or specialty coffee or, gourmet, whatever, like yes, you introduce the thing at first and people eventually see, oh yeah, there's this whole world of these awesome flavors and cool experiences and whatnot. The next level of like maturing that industry and maturing those flavors and tastes and engagement, like your raw materials and what does that look like and how do you tie that to, and also how are we presenting to this people and who are we presenting this to? I feel like it seems really esoteric and not obvious, but I do think like caring about your raw materials and caring about, inclusion and representation and all those things ties really closely together,
Mhm.
because it's just about thinking about this whole thing on another level
If
besides just
you're-
delivering.
If you're not, just as a basic business practice, if you're typically, I would say, I can't, it's not an absolute comment, but
Sure.
you're not thinking about inclusion, you're alienating
Yeah.
drinkers, so, or people who would buy your product. So it's like, it should be on your mind when you design, like, where is this going? Where, like you just said, where is it
Yeah.
being sold? What is it using? Who am I excluding? How do I not do that?
Yeah.
So there's very many layers to design, but that's a huge part of it
Do
too.
you think, do you think that we're in craft beer, we'll say, to narrow the focus of it? You think we're on a positive track inclusionary wise? Or does
Yeah.
even like asking that question kind of answer the question?
No,
Yeah.
I think we are, and I believe, again, I don't represent
No.
everybody, but I think that there is, I don't know, this just feeling in me at certain events and, different personal collabs, but also being in different cities and stuff. Over the last year, I've definitely seen a shift of
Yeah.
awareness.
And that's why I want to ask you the question in the first place, because you are in all these places. You are in multiple areas where you might see a shift or a difference in that kind of thing. And that's where I'm curious, like, oh, is that something that in all these places you're seeing the bar rise, or you're seeing the door open, I guess is more of an apt
Yeah.
descriptor of it.
I mean, I'm
Yeah.
seeing shifts in, around the country, definitely around the world too. But also, like, it's a place where I still learn, because I'm not perfect, right?
Yeah.
So my awareness is shifting and growing
Totally.
from being
Oh
around
my
all
God.
these other people. So
Yeah.
it doesn't feel stagnant, I would say.
Dude, oh my God. That's that's the thing. Yeah, no, that's hopeful, and that makes me feel good. Like, it's not stagnant. It's dynamic, and it's
Yeah.
changing and whatnot. I love that. And I mean, we're getting kind of close to our time and whatnot. We've talked a lot about experience design, right? That's kind of been one of the main themes of just like, how do we deliver something? I don't know. It's not just how do we deliver something interesting to the people drinking it, but what is the experience of brewing in the first place and whatnot. And I think we've come back to community. I've wanted to, talk about community a lot. That's one of the aspects I think, because of your opportunities, you can really speak on in a unique, voice. But, what would you say? As far as that community involvement piece of it being really important, you were just in Philadelphia at Pink Boots. Like, how is Pink Boots kind of, facing our current challenges and whatnot?
There's a lot. I mean, and Pink Boots itself
Sure.
is facing its own, like, I'm not, they're doing great, but I'm saying
Yeah,
they're constantly
it's not
striving
unique, but
to make situations. So I would say, compared to the last CBC conference, which was in Charlotte, it's biennial, so every 2 years.
uh-huh.
As a group, if you're involved with it, the board and the chapter leaders and everyone, which I'm the Fort Collins chapter leader, just happens to be, or one of them. We actually have 2 others, so I should say there's 3 of us, and I'm involved with that. But we've been growing, right? And I think, how is Pink Boots tackling it or I think their mission is, or our mission, I guess, is a strong one, right? It's about education and trying to grow and have inclusivity. And so I think, just even going from the last 2 years to this conference, there were things we can work on, of course, always. Anybody can work on things. No one's perfect, but
I'm damn close. I'm like,
oh shit. All right, I gotta go. No, but I think we're just trying to make sure that the talks that we talk
Yes.
about aren't just like, this is how you make that.
Readdressing the same thing over and over.
Yeah, it's, you have to grow, and just like anybody who goes to,
Yeah.
you know, I just feel like we've been growing a lot as a community and trying to listen a lot more. And obviously that's what the craft brewing community is
100%.
supposedly working on too.
Yes. And we hope
But
so.
going in a literal circle, I have seen a lot of change over the past year or two. So
Yeah.
it's promising.
Yeah.
Feels good.
Yeah.
And even if people accept
It's
their
not-
mistakes,
It's not
you
stagnant.
grow. Yeah.
Yeah. You spoke a little bit ago about beer to queer. I love that that was your adventure beer that spoke to you. And my intention today was actually to like get you to tell some crazy adventure brewing stories,
I mean, I
because I know
can,
you
but
have them. And we'll probably end on at least one, but I want to talk about beer to queer a little bit more, just in terms of it's clearly evolved since its original iteration and how you brewed it. Like where do you see beer to queer going, and what's your hope for beer to queer?
I mean, that beer, the if I don't like using this term a lot, but the liquid, right? It was just a personal thing. And then the first beer to queer at New Belgium,
Yeah.
is actually a fall release. Is a totally different.
Oh, it wasn't like during
Brew.
Pride, it wasn't during
It,
like whatever.
well, I brewed it for National Coming Out Day, which
Okay.
people don't. You know, we
Really?
usually lump a lot of things in June.
Right.
But that is in October, or the original date was October 8th, like 20. I don't even know what year it is. Sometime a little bit ago in a different year. But yeah, I originally brewed it for that, and it had apricot and cinnamon. So it was like a fall Belgian, just like 8%. But so from that moment, I wanted to make something that could be used to celebrate a different, like an off nominal holiday that like
Yeah.
helped people feel
Mhm.
included. And we did make it then, and we canned it. It was great. But then as like beer queer evolved, we started getting asked to make it for all types of festivals, really.
Yeah.
But there a lot were in the spring and summer, and I'm like, I could chug that beer during a 95-degree day in Arizona, but and I'm not saying. So I switched it to a new liquid that actually the old beer I was talking about from the Hawaii experience. I made an iteration of it called, we kind of at New Belgium just give each other beer names that are like, so this was Kelly's Tropical Ale.
Yeah, that's right.
This week I'm making Dave's Hefeweizen. Like it's easier TTV wise, but it's also fun because it gives a shout out to whoever makes whatever. So I switched Kelly's Tropical, which was the Mai Tai beer, to beer to queer, and then it's been going crazy ever since. I mean, it's not 100,000 barrel brand, but we use it. We don't use it. I make it because I want to drink it, and then we brew it and can it in smaller batches now. But I think it's just so good.
Yeah. It's
and
super
I have
it is very big.
It's a 7.4%.
Yeah. Well, you know,
but it does not drink like that.
No.
It drinks like a nice icy, I don't know.
It's super refreshing.
It's a cocktail. But anyway, where do I see it going? I have versions of it that we can make margin wise that fit to brew it on the 120 or 240 hectoliter system. And I know our company's doing a lot to make sure there's a big ask for it.
Yeah.
But at the same time, we're also at max capacity.
Yeah.
For everything else. So we're fitting it in. I feel like next year will be a bigger year for it.
Okay.
But there's a big ask, but not a lot of space.
I'm
which
stoked
we need to make space for it.
I'm stoked it's there.
We're
And I
working that
also love, like you said, that originally it was intended for coming out day versus just,
Pride,
lumping it in with Pride stuff. And I think, that kind of acknowledgement is also definitely worthwhile.
Yeah.
Making space for. So we're getting close here.
Yeah, I think.
Do you have a wild beer adventure that you can encapsulate in
in
a
like
tiny
30
little 30
seconds?
seconds?
A beer that I made or a beer that I drank? What was it?
Just a beer event, like you're going somewhere to
Yeah, there's so every
And
at your 5 year
XYZ happened.
it's not even that big of a deal compared to the shit that I've really done. But they're
That's your own podcast. That's for the book.
New Belgium at 5 years takes every employee from Bell's too, but on your 5 year all expense paid trip to Belgium.
Yeah.
And I went on mine and I had heard so many crazy stories from everyone else and all the past trips, right? So I get to mine. And of course, Peter Buchart, Freezy Buchart, they're our chaperones. They show us
Cool.
everything. It's great. So we're in Bruges at this bar, and I can't remember the name. It's a really long name off the top of my head, but it's the one where if you want a liter clock glass in the wooden stem, you have to give them your shoe, a shoe, and they put it in a basket and hoist it to the ceiling.
Okay.
And that's your collateral. If you don't give them the glass back, you don't get your shoe. Well, I fucking knew I was going into this thing without a shoe ever going back on my foot. And it was fine, like big deal. It's POS stuff. Who cares? It's probably cost them like 20 cents. So anyway, I'm like trying to steal it. And Freezy and Peter, the Belgians, are like in our chaperones. We're like,
Yeah.
they're like, don't drink the last sip. Because the server will take it from
She'll
you.
come grab it.
And I was like, okay. And I was waiting for the opportunity.
I love that your
to grab it.
chaperones are like, this is how you do, this is how you break the law.
And our thing in New Belgium is we have giant chalices. So every time a brewer, huge ones in our brew houses, giant glasses, and every time a brewer moves on, we fill it up and the whole brew team chugs it. And that could be like someone going to make cheat, whatever, a
Yeah.
brewer leaving. But people have been stealing them. So I was like,
man.
knew when I was going to Belgium, I was going to get a fucking big glass. So shoes up at the ceiling. Peter and Freezy Buchart are telling me, don't finish it because you got to steal this thing. And then the moment came and I jacked it with my friend, left my shoe. That was the price.
That's the price.
Friggin' ran in the rain on the cobblestone, go to a hotel right next to our bar, a couple blocks away, with my buddy Mindy. She works at New Belgium. And we're drinking a beer. We're like, yeah, we did it.
Still
Well,
without a shoe.
Without a shoe, I don't care. My wife hates this story because she's not as, that's not even adventure, but like whatever. So anyway, through the back door of this bar as we're celebrating, my friend and I, Dick Cantwell, who's gonna be on this soon, and Peter Buchart come through the back door of this bar, and Dick, and I was like, oh, and they looked not happy. And Dick looks at me and he goes, guess who just paid 90 euros for that glass you stole? I was like, what the fuck? I left my shoe. And he was like, yeah, but the way the server she was not having it. And so I was like, oh, what's up, man? So anyway, then it's become this whole thing. But in general, I told Kim Jordan when she was making fun of me, I was like, I was a little embarrassed, right? The next day. And I was like, if that's the worst crazy thing that happens, it's Belgian trip, like who cares?
Also, Dick can cover it.
I'll ask about it on the next one. Yeah. That's just a little story. It's a big deal.
It's not a big deal. Right on. You're a big deal.
You're a big deal.
You're my friend, and I love you.
Love you too.
This is so awesome. Thank you so much for doing this. So Kelly will be back on the next episode of this show as the host, having a conversation with a brewer of her choosing. That will be on the air in 2 weeks, so make sure you tune in for it. A reminder, visit allaboutbeer.com and follow on social media, please. To support journalism in the beer space, check out patreon.com/allaboutbeer. I'm Christopher M.F. Schooley of Troubadour Maltings, and thank you for listening to the Brewer to Brewer podcast. Peace.
First Tea is your source for chamomile, hibiscus, ginger, and a whole host of herbs and botanicals. Whether you're working on a new experience or want to give your existing brews a boost, contact First Tea for the botanicals you need. Email them at info@firsttea.com. That's FIRSDTEA.com.
For more than a decade, the Beer Law Center has been dedicated to the craft beverage industry, meeting the legal needs of breweries, wineries, distilleries, and all manner of alcohol producers and sellers around the country. From company formation to federal and state licensing, trademarks, regulations, and compliance, or if you're buying or selling an alcohol business, the Beer Law Center should be your first call. The firm never charges for an initial consultation, and if they can't help you, they'll help you find someone that can. Have a legal question? Contact the Beer Law Center on social media at Beer Law Center and online at beerlawcenter.com.
Malt Europe Malting Company is based in North America, specializing in growing and producing quality malts for the craft beer and distilling industries. With local farms and malt houses spread across the United States, Canada, and Mexico, MMC's commitment to excellence is fully ingrained into every batch it produces, ensuring breweries and distilleries of any size can create the finest beverages on the planet. Visit malteuropemaltingco.com to learn how Malt Europe can support your malting needs. Or you can contact them at customer success at malteurope.com or call 844-546-MALT for questions or to place your order. Malt Europe, premium grains from field to flavor.